Alright, I got the pan back. It's nice and clean. I just sprayed it down with brake clean just to make sure that the PCV return port there is clear, and it's completely clear. There's nothing in there. Now, if this is a 99, so for 99s and up, you have this extra line here, and these have O-rings in them. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this to replace those two O-rings. For the one down there, as far as I can tell, it doesn't have an O-ring, and I can't see an O-ring on the diagram. So I guess the one down there doesn't, but this one has a bolt right on there, so this is made to be removed. That does not look like it is. Alright, pulled it out, so I pulled it out from there, and then just pulled it out from that hole there. Now these were very loose. This was very loose in there. Not the bolt, but the O-rings. Now these are the new O-rings that this calls for, which the old ones, I don't know if they're stretched or... because the O-ring it calls for appears to be just ever so slightly smaller. Or thicker, I mean. The old one appears to be a little bit thicker. But I did go to the dealer to check that they did have, these were the same O-rings. And they were. This kit gives you the exactly the same ones that Volvo gives you. So these should be the right ones to go in there. Alright, so I did look on this end. The new ones are exactly the same size, but on this end it's slightly larger. Now I think the dealer does call that they're supposed to both be exactly the same. So what I think has happened is one of them has just stretched. Since one gets pushed in or gets pressed in, well, not really pressed in, but this gets bolted down, so the O-ring gets pushed down, and I think it just stretched it, stretched it out, while this one just gets pushed in here. There's nothing pushing on it besides this on the sides, so that's why the one on that side's coming out to be the same size, and this one's coming out to be a little bit larger, even though these two are exactly the same diameter. So now, go ahead and use some brake clean. Now use some non-chlorinated brake clean, because otherwise it'll destroy the aluminum or it'll stain it. But clean your bolt hole there before you put it on, because if you have oil on a bolt and you torque it, it's going to throw your torque off way off, and you're going to be very likely to strip it. So just make sure that's clean. Now, to put them on, we're going to use wheel bearing grease. Just a little bit. We're going to use this on every single O-ring we're installing here. So this is just to have it slide in easier so that we don't risk of tearing it. And then when we put the other ones for here, we're going to put those on the block of the engine first, so they're going to have to hold on. And we'll put grease on one side of them so that we can place them on the block, and they're going to stay there when you come in to put your pan. Alright, so those new O-rings are a lot tighter than the old ones. I think if you don't use grease to put them on, you may tear them because they're very tight in there. So definitely get some wheel bearing grease. And I've tightened this bolt down. I didn't go crazy on it. The torque rating for the bolt pans is 12 foot-pounds, but I do not know the torque for that one. So I'm just going to kind of probably around 10 foot-pounds, but be really careful. Do it by feel, because you don't want to strip that. Alright, so now we're going to go in and clean all this up, and then we'll put the pickup tube. Do not forget to put that in. That wouldn't be very good. But here is our PCV return. So you want to get some brake clean and yeah, spray up there. And then I'm going to spray all this down with brake clean, and then I'll take acetone to get it all ready. Now this car has been sitting for 4 days, and as you can see there's still oil, a little bit of oil dripping off. But when you put the pan on, you don't want any oil getting on that surface, otherwise you'll get an oil leak. So I'm going to clean this with brake clean and see how long it takes for oil to get to it. If it gets on the surface too fast, I may wait till tomorrow just to make sure that this doesn't leak. good. Nothing's coming out of it, so that means that it's not clogged. It's completely clear. Looks like no oil has gotten on the side here in the past 5 minutes, so that's good. I can now clean it with some acetone. Alright, so always put your pickup tube on top of your oil pan so that there's no way for you to forget it. Now to coat all of this, you're going to use an anaerobic sealer and the Volvo roller. Now this Volvo roller is about $8, so it's actually cheaper to buy it from Volvo than to go to a store and get a roller. But yeah. Alright, so at the moment I am removing the turbo drain as it is leaking a little bit. I did replace the turbo feed line I think a year ago. So just undid that bracket there. Gonna undo those 2 bolts. It's leaking a little bit from that here. Now it's not a lot, but the thing is, if something falls down in it right now, it'll just fall right out, and if I do it later and something falls in, it's gonna fall in the oil pan, which is I could avoid that right now, so it's gonna take that off. Alright, there it is. Just took it off. You can see there's a gasket down there. I just pulled this out. It was stuck in there. Now I'm just gonna spray a bunch of brake clean in there, since it'll just come right back out. Obviously, don't spray brake clean in there if your oil pan is on. That would not be very smart. But here it is. Time for a new one. This one was also very loose in there, so that's why it was leaking. Alright, just pulled this off. I thought these were hard to remove, but they just come off in one piece, so all good. Alright, here's the turbo drain, and all these are the same, which is a little strange why they would give so many of the same, but all these are the right size for that there. This one looks thinner, so I don't know if this one just was crushed and that's why it's thinner, but I guess one of these will do fine. And then we got a new one here again from the kit there that we can go in and put there. Alright, so now we're going to install the O-ring, there, or the pickup tube. Here's the old O-ring and here's the new one. As you can see, I put a little bit of grease on it just to make sure it'll slide on easy. Otherwise these will slide on really dry, and when you push them in the engine you might rip them. Alright, there it is. You can see how far I pushed in. You can't even see the O-ring anymore. Now if you have a 98 or 850, it'll go to the same spot, but the shape of it will be a little bit different, just a little bit. Alright, so now I put grease on only one side of the O-ring. We're going to go under the car and put them in place, and they will hold there so that you don't have to worry about locating them. Alright, so there they go. They hold.
Nice.
Now make sure if you get any grease on the side of it, you wipe it off so that the anaerobic sealer can seal. Alright, so now everything's ready. I'm going to go ahead and apply the anaerobic sealer here with the Volvo paint roller. I'm going to put the anaerobic sealer in here. Alright, you just roll it on just like paint. Alright, there we go. So as you can see, I took the old O-rings and just pushed a little bit around the anaerobic sealer, just in those areas so that there's not too much. Now we're going to go ahead and put this on, and if you put a little bit too much, as long as it's just a little bit, it's fine. So I'm going to go in and put this on now. Alright, so now I got a couple bolts in. Now all these 10mm bolts need to be torqued down to 12 foot-pounds. So I'm going to start from the middle, but I'm first going to put all of them on and I'll snug them, and then I'll start torquing them from the middle outwards. Alright, all the bolts are torqued down to 12 foot-pounds. Now the bell housing bolts here, I just made them tight. I didn't really torque them. Otherwise all the other bolts 12 foot-pounds. Now on the side, it's all the really small bolts. Then the ones that are a little longer go in the front of the pan here, 1, 2, and 3 back there. The one in the corner there is a small one. And then there are 3 or 4 really long ones. They're on the bell housing. Be careful when you put these in, because it's pretty easy to put them in crooked, and they'll go in between the block and the flywheel, and it'll kind of feel like you're threading them in, but you're not.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
So now, I'm just taking care of this bolt, which you may not have, depending on what year or steering rack you have. So now I just need to go on the other side, or on. Alright, I've just reinstalled. Can you see it? Right here. The little clip here, or the metal clamp here that holds this hose on. I've reinstalled also the 10mm in the back of the pan. Now if you have a 98 or 850, you're probably not going to have this line here. It'll most likely be on the other side next to the other power steering line. This is the bolt here I'm talking about. Right here on the side. It's smaller than all the bell house and all the other pan bolts. Now my 98 did not have this bracket because it had both lines going, power steering line going next to each other, while this one only has one. Now again, I'm not sure if that's because of the rack, because this has a different steering rack, or if it's just because of the way they routed for the new power steering pump that replaced the old one. Now we're going to go ahead and install the bracket here that holds the power steering line. After we've done that, I will loosely put down the torque mount, transmission torque mount, and then we will lower the engine. And after that, install the oil cooler, which in my case it's right here, but on my 98 or 850 it's going to be right over here. Alright, so all the side ones, just to remember, all the ones on the sides are the smallest bolts, and there's 3 longer bolts, one there, and right back there. Those are the 3 medium-sized bolts, and then there's 4 really long ones, which are the 4 here, right next to the transmission. So now I've reinstalled the bracket back there that held the power steering line. Now, I mean, if you manage to get that apart, this is a desert car, so nothing is rusted on this car. So that's why I'm easily able to take the little stuff apart, like this one piece here. On my 98, that bolt was completely rusted. Couldn't get it off, but this one, it came right off. I loosely put the torque mount, and if you notice, this is also loose. I didn't put the bolt here. I'm going to go ahead and drop the engine. Once the engine is lowered, then we could go ahead and tighten this, which we need to push this power steering line out of the way. That's why I didn't hook this up. We can torque these down, and once those are tightened, we could put that in place, and then install, and then you can install your oil cooler, whether if it's a 99 and up, it's going to be back here, or if it's a 98 or 850, it's going to be right there. Alright, so I just undid the bolt I had on the top there. Now I have the jack, it's holding it up. Obviously, put the jack underneath, hold the engine up, and then undo this bolt. Now I'm just going to gently lower it. Usually, the best way to do this is actually to lift the car higher, because if you lower it, it's a little difficult to control that jack unless you have a good one. So I'm actually going to jack up here rather than going down. Otherwise, I'm scared I might drop it too much. Alright, so now those are nice and tight. So now you can go ahead and install. Oh, now that I've raised the car, I have some coolant leaking. However, that's something else, because I undid a bunch of coolant lines. So anyway, now it's time for you to install your oil cooler. Now if you have a 98 or 850, it's going to be right there where you see those holes. That line will not be there. And in my case, the 99, it's going to be under the car on the pan. Don't forget your transmission mount to tighten it. Don't tighten these bolts too much. It's an aluminum. Those can get pretty tight. but those, you're gonna strip it if you do get them too tight. Next here we have our mount. Just need to tighten this down, and then I will install the oil cooler. Alright, here's the oil cooler. I've just cleaned the area here with acetone. These are the old O-rings, and those are the new ones. Now remember, this is for 99 and up. If you have an 850 or 98, the oil cooler is going to be on the side of the engine with hoses going to your radiator, and that's going to use a rectangular O-ring, which this kit does not include, so you have to buy that separately. Alright, and the last thing here is the dipstick tube, which a new seal is included. Alright, got some grease on the end of it. Alright, now we're done, except I don't have the wheel on, but I'm going to replace the tie rods on it, so it's fine. Otherwise, for the oil pan, it's all done. Just put the wheel back on, and I would actually wait till the next day before you fill it with oil, as anaerobic sealer is supposed to cure within an hour, but it might be better to just leave it sit. Now this car's going to sit for a little bit longer than that, because the coolant line for the PCV system in the back actually ruptured and made a mess. Now, as you can see, I've replaced almost all of the lines with silicone, and there's only a couple that I forgot to replace. I knew they were there, but then I kind of forgot about them, which was the 3 lines, coolant lines for the PCV system, which if you have a 98 or 850, you will not have those lines, and the 2 lines for the oil cooler underneath the car, which if you have a 98 or an 850, you will not have those lines either. But I would definitely check on your coolant lines, especially the ones that are next to the turbo. Those are the ones that love to explode. Alright, so now I'm going to fill it up back with oil. I'm going to be using this oil, which is approved for a bunch of Volvos, Mercedes, BMW. Now the nice thing with this oil, I've used it before, is that it's designed to also work in diesels. Now what that means, since the gas engines don't get nearly as hot, I had an issue with the XC90 V8 where it was actually evaporating oil into the PCV system and causing it to get a bunch of oil in the intake, and using this oil, it didn't evaporate as much, and it solved that issue. Now, maybe before I wasn't using that good of an oil, although it's a pretty good brand. But I'm going to be using this oil. Now, it's not specifically designed, or it doesn't specifically say you can put it in this engine, but it is listed for the later, after 2001, 2.5 liter engines and the 2.4s, which there's not that much difference in between them. They're very lightly different, but this oil does meet all the specifications for this engine, so I'm going to be using the German oil. Obviously, don't forget to put your oil filter in place. Mine's pretty clean. I'm going to put it there in there. Alright, I'm getting ready to put this on, and now that I've cleaned this, I can see that it looks like someone has removed this without using the proper tool, which is this wrench here. That's a little disappointing. I will probably replace this at some point, and it doesn't look that damaged, but alright, so I looked in the owner's manual. The fill capacity of this oil with the turbo is 6.8 liters. I'm looking liters because this is in liters, it is not in quarts. So now I'm just going to pour it in. Alright, so now what you want to do is, now that everything's back together, the car's back on the ground, before you start it, you want to remove and maybe wear some gloves, because I did not wear gloves during this entire time. You want to remove the fuel pump fuse, which it should be this middle one here. Just check it here. Yep, there it is. Fuel pump. Just going to open the secondary fuse box here. Okay, well, Alright, this clearly hasn't been open in a long time. Gonna pull this fuse out, boom. Put that, I'll probably put that up there. Okay, so now you want to crank the engine for around 30 seconds. Now I would divide this up, not to just crank it straight on for 30 seconds, but this is just to get oil circulating, as there is no oil anywhere in the oil cooler or in the oil filter. Everything's perfectly clean. So if you just start it, your car will not have oil for around 30 seconds, which is not good. That's really bad for your engine. So first, we're going to go ahead and crank it. Alright, here we go. Okay, my battery's almost dead. Alright, moment of truth now. I'm gonna start it. If you hear the oil pump screaming, just turn it off after 3 seconds of hearing it, because it should go away. If it doesn't go away, turn it off. Crank the engine a little more, so take that fuel pump fuse out again, and do it again. Alright? If it may scream a little bit, but as long as it doesn't scream too much. Well, I don't have enough battery power. Alright, let's try it again. That is low oil pressure, and there it goes. Okay, so far sounds good. We are going to reset that service light. Just want to make sure that the top of the engine is getting oil, which it is. Alright, now I'm just going to gently let it warm up and check under the car to make sure there's no leaks.
That's a lot of damage!